And the judges would please introduce themselves.
Okay, will do. Hello, everybody. We're delighted you're here. My name is Thomas Mackey. I'm at the History Department at the University of Louisville and the Law School here at the University of Louisville. My colleagues will introduce themselves.
Rita McCannon. I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama.
Good afternoon. I'm Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and a retired professor of American politics at Hendrix College. And we'll let y'all introduce yourselves now.
Good afternoon, judges. We're Unit 3. Our unit focuses on how the Constitution has been changed to further the ideals in our Declaration of Independence. My name is Rachel, and in the fall, I will be studying biology at Fordham University.
Hello, my name is Sai, and I'll be studying mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley.
Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'll be studying psychology at Penn State University.
Hello, I'm Rohit, and I'll be studying finance at the University of Michigan. But for now, we are all seniors at Trumbull High School, and this is our teacher, Ms. Boland. We thank you for being here today.
Good. Delighted to see you guys. Welcome. We're delighted to spend some time with you. Unit 3, this is question number 2. It opens with a quote. Let me read the question, then we'll get you started. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You may begin.
There is an undeniable irony underlying the origin of our two-party system. Today, many Americans criticize the system, seeing as it represents the division within our government. They hear relentless rhetoric exchanged between leaders of the two parties who seemingly cannot agree on anything. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, America's original political rivals, actually agreed on at least one fundamental issue. A two-party system was a problem, not a solution.
Two principal factors led to the formation of the original political parties. First was the structure of government that the framers created. The framers believed that they were preventing a majority political party by combining a large, diverse republic with the separation of powers across competing institutions. Doing so, they thought, would avert the hyper-partisanship that plagued prior republics.
However, as Lee Drutman, the author of Breaking the Two-Party Doom Loop, recently written, political parties formed almost instantly due to the requirement of the modern mass democracy, and partisanship became a strong identity, jumping across institutions and eventually collapsing the republic's diversity into just two camps.
Second, there were a number of significant political issues over which the framers vehemently disagreed and which served as the catalyst for the formation of the two political parties. The delegates in Philadelphia dealt with disagreements over representation, slavery, sovereignty, the executive, and the listing of rights, to name a few. The framers understood that government was necessary, but experience also taught them that a government with too much power was destined to become oppressive.
The Federalists sought for a stronger national government and the separation of powers, while the Anti-Federalists believed in amplifying states' rights to protect against the infringement of individual rights.
Unsurprisingly, many of the issues that placed the two original political parties at odds with each other still exist today. Americans need to confront the reality that they need to align themselves with the political party if they want to have any political relevance. And federalism in particular remains at the core of almost every debate of political significance, spanning the spectrum of individual rights to civil rights to Obamacare to COVID relief.
The advantages of a divided government are often overlooked by Americans. Divided government ensures that power remains in check, that legislation is debated extensively, and that only the cream can rise to the top. In a divided government, tyranny is held at bay. Of course, this check on tyranny of the majority often comes at a significant cost. First responders on 9/11, for example, are still fighting for government funding 2 decades later. Unified government then is advantageous in that it is far more responsive to the will of the people.
Still, in our view, it is more important for the government to be divided than unified, as we believe the framers had envisioned. The concerns about legislative gridlock are overstated. In the last 40 years, 51% of the bills passed with the divided government, and that number only rose to 57% with the unified government. And in both cases, recent history is replete with examples of important legislation that has passed with bipartisan support.
In 1986, for example, the biggest and most complete overhaul of the tax code in post-war America was done in a bipartisan effort under a unified government.
In 1996, Congress passed one of the most sweeping changes to the country's welfare system, amidst one of the most polarized and divided governments in recent time.
However, in today's climate, we believe that John Adams may be correct in dreading the two-party system. With the proliferation of the media and gerrymandered districts, compromise may be a thing of the past. We hope for the sake of our country that we are wrong.
Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Cool. Boy, that's a lot of stuff to work through, and you do a lot to chew on there. Let me think of it this way. This is one of those big questions in American history from the 18th century to today. And the question itself, as well as particularly some of your closing and some of your presentation, presents political parties in kind of a negative light, yet they still have positive functions. Can you help me understand what political parties allow? What do they do? How do they continue to exist if they're so clumsy as at least some of your scholars and your presentation suggests?
Well, as James Madison said in Federalist 10, ambition is made to counteract ambition. So when you have different amounts of parties with different ambitions fighting each other, there can't really be one majority that's against a minority. So we have two majority parties and they kind of keep each other in check. It's kind of like the separation of powers in our government per se. So if we have two parties rather than one party or no parties at all, we're able to make sure that everyone's interests are fulfilled and the common good of the people is in place.
And Madison also stated in Federalist 10 that multiple parties can divide mankind into factions, fostering animosity rather than cooperation. And I think the reason that the two-party system has, persisted for so long is because not only with the addition of multiple parties may construct animosity, but also due to Duverger's law, which states that people will naturally flock to one side or the other, thus creating two large parties or two large camps, like we said in our opening, at odds with each other.
Yeah, adding on to Rohit, another reason for why there's only been two political parties for the longest time is the idea of negative partisanship. We are plagued in a society today where people vote for their party because of dislike of the other rather than support of their own. A Pew Research study recently found that 65% of Republicans voted for their party because of dislike of the Democratic Party rather than supporting their presidential candidate. So as long as this idea of negative partisanship is there in our society, I believe that we will keep reverting back to the two-party system we have.
Ms. Levinson, you wanted in there. I could see it. Did you want to add?
I'm okay, thank you.
You're good. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Jay, perhaps?
Yeah, so I was suggesting, challenges with the two-party system. Why not a multi-party system as a potential response to that two-party divide?
Personally, I do not believe a multi-party system would work in our nation right now due to our winner-take-all system. The root of the issue lies not necessarily in the parties, but this winner-take-all system, because it prevents third-party candidates for garnering enough support. And I think a good solution to this would be ranked choice voting. In the 2020 election, Maine became the first state to use ranked choice voting nationally, and it essentially allows for people to vote for a candidate that best aligns with their political beliefs without having to worry about throwing away their vote. Essentially, so someone could have voted for Bernie Sanders in the 2020 election or a third-party candidate, and they don't have to worry about necessarily voting for Trump because they know that candidate will not garner enough support. Because if the candidate they ranked first doesn't get enough support, it then goes to their second ranked candidate, and I think that would be a great solution.
Yeah, I would agree with Rachel. And I think a lot of people think that changing the two-party system by changing the winner-take-all system is not a viable option because it would require an amendment and that takes a very long time. So I think one of the easiest ways that we can solve this quickly is by reforming our campaign finance. So as of right now, according to the Federal Election Committee, a third party needs at least 5% of the popular vote from a prior election to get this financial support. So let's say that I am a third party candidate and I'm gaining a lot of support this year. I still wouldn't necessarily have that financial support to carry me through my election if I didn't have that support last year. So this makes it very difficult for third parties to come up into elections and have this multi-party system. So if we were able to reform this, I think that would be great for our democracy.
Another viable way that we can ensure that third parties and independent parties get a say in our government would be to switch to multi-member districts. Rather than having 10 districts which each vote for a single member, if we were to switch to one district which had 10 members and 40% of the population in that district voted for Democrats and the other 40% for Republicans, then 20% or 2 of the 10 spots would still go to third party voters and independent voters. This would ensure that our third parties have a say in our government.
How do you see yourselves in the future? Do you, I know Lauren has mentioned multi-parties and those differences, and you have all talked about a different way of pursuing things rather than our two-party system we have now. What do you see as your roles in the future? Do you see yourselves becoming involved in a political party or in a faction or maybe in a nonprofit in order to make some kind of change? I know because you've taken this program, you have some interest in civic education. I'd be curious to know if you're going to continue that.
Yeah, I would say definitely that I would definitely love to continue my interest in politics. And a study actually showed that our generation, Generation Z, is the most politically active generation, in that we are very activist. We focus a lot on making change. And I think one thing that I personally will do is I hope to not bring a negative partisan attitude when I vote, like my colleague Sai mentioned. I'll do my best to vote based on policy rather than voting on dislike of the other party. So I think that's something important to consider.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep politics in my future, but instead of looking towards the future, I think there are things that could be done now. Personally, I believe that 16 and 17-year-olds should actually be allowed to vote. And this is something they implemented in Austria. And then a study done by the University of Vienna shortly following this found that there's no difference in civic education or political knowledge of those age 16 and 17 versus those age 18 and above. So while yes, I do want to continue pursuing politics in the future, I think there are things that can be done now to allow me to be more civically educated and more involved in politics.
I think we're experiencing a political realignment period right now, I would argue, because we can compare what's going on with the Republican Party and even the Democratic Party to some extent to the collapse of the Whig Party, where we just have so many different opinions, and I don't think we can fit everyone in two parties as of right now. So I think that in the future, I can see maybe a multi-party system being an option, but again, we have to go through all these reforms that we mentioned before. As for what I can do myself, I actually got to vote this year because I turned 18 before the election, which was a great experience for me. And I would encourage all of my classmates and people that I know to get their voice out there as well.
Well, thank you very much. Good on timing too. This is always an evergreen topic. Like I said, this is one of those tough topics, and people have been struggling with these issues since the 18th century, and Congresses and houses and judges and justices. So of course we ask high school students to decide these issues. So it's completely unfair, but always a lot of fun to see how you think through the issues. And you did a good job. You think well on your feet. You've thought about these larger issues and controlled the historical context as well. So I thought this was really interesting, and I thank you for your efforts.
I thought y'all did a particularly nice job of teamwork in terms of, really answering in a way that you build on each other, you listen to each other, it really did show, I think it's an important skill that goes beyond the substance of the material, but you also did a very good job on that. And I did think you handled Rita's closing question particularly well and did bring it home. And I thought Lauren, your close was particularly nice. You summed up why we're really all here doing this work and thinking about using this knowledge to create a different kind of future.
I'm very thankful that your generation is coming along to straighten things out. I look forward to seeing what you all can do in the future. I wish you well the rest of the way. And I was just really, really impressed that you have embraced the idea that you can start making a difference now and in the future, and that you intend to do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, well done, guys, so much.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Good luck with the rest of the competition.